Hi, welcome back to my kitchen. My name is Laura, and this is Jacob. He's my helper today, and we are gonna make sweet corn bisque. This is a recipe that's perfect to make in the height of the corn season with sweet, fresh corn. So the first thing we're gonna do is preheat our pot and get that warmed up, and then we're gonna chop an onion up. We need about a cup to a cup and a half of onion. With these big wall of onions, a half is definitely gonna do the trick, so we'll start with that. We are gonna end up blending this soup. I say it's a soup, and I already said it's a bisque. So a bisque is a blended soup. So I'm gonna roughly chop these onions. And I'm not gonna be too picky about what size they are because I know the whole thing is gonna be blended in the end. Well, we're gonna get this started sautéing in our pot. We're gonna do garlic next, but I always like to get the onions going a little bit first, so we'll do that. We need a 1/4 cup of butter, and unless you're trying to do this vegan or vegetarian, I would say go for the butter on this recipe because it really helps enhance the flavor. Oh, there's the sizzle we're waiting for. And in she goes. We'll get that bay leaf in right away as well. The bay leaf helps the flavor of this soup. I'm not necessarily trying to get the onions to brown on this one. I just want them to be cooked and nice and sauteed. Alrighty, so we need 2 cloves of garlic for this recipe. So Jacob, you want to get that out? So like that, and then push, and then cock your knife. There. So my trick to peeling garlic, because peeling garlic kind of frustrates me, is to take my knife and carefully, if it's flat, just like that. And again, here we can just rough chop it. Doesn't need to be too fine, knowing that we're gonna blend it later. And then I'll throw that in my pot. Alrighty, so we are gonna let that simmer for another couple minutes, and then we're gonna put our corn in. Now today I've already taken the corn off the husks, but if you wanna see how to do that, if you check out our corn chowder recipe, we've got instructions on that video on how to take the corn off the husk. So we're looking for about 3 cups of fresh corn, which is gonna be roughly 5 or 6 cobs of corn, depending on the size of the cob, of course. I will just say that I wouldn't use frozen or canned corn for this recipe. This recipe is kind of a pure corn soup. There's not a lot of other spices and whatnot that we put in it. So you're gonna wanna use good fresh corn in order to get the flavor there. So we can head over to our pot and we're gonna add 3 cups of our sweet corn and we're gonna add 2 cups of broth. And I've got homemade broth here today, but you can use either store-bought broth or homemade, whichever you have on hand. So as this is boiling, do keep the lid off so that we can reduce down this broth a little bit as well. It's not a super thick soup to begin with, so this helps thicken it a little bit as well. Alrighty, so it's been about 10 or 15 minutes. The kernels look nice and soft, the onions look nice and soft. So what we're gonna do now is shut it off, and we just need to let it cool down a little bit before we blend it because we don't wanna blend it when it's piping hot. You can transfer it to a new bowl if you like, and then that will help cool it down a little bit faster. Alrighty, so we've let our soup mix here cool down a little bit. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna pour it into a blender. And I will say these handy dandy immersion blenders, for this recipe, they don't cut it. And I learned that the hard way, but they just don't have enough power to really blend this corn up enough because we want this soup to be now as smooth as possible. And the other thing you don't want to forget is remember we have a bay leaf in here. So you don't want to blend your bay leaf up. So make sure you take that little baby out of there. We're going to carefully pour this in. Jacob, you can put this 1 cup of 1 cup of heavy cream in there, which is whipping cream. In this case, my soup is not stone cold. Well, I have a blender that has this, so I'm gonna lift it up. If your blender doesn't have this option, don't try and blend this while it's hot or warm. Let it cool down completely. Okay, we're gonna let it run. So with this recipe, when you think you're done blending it, you're not. Do it again. So we're gonna do it again. It's not perfect, but it's looking pretty smooth. So I'm actually gonna let this blend a little bit more. Ideally, when we're tasting this, we want it to have a smooth texture, and I can still see some chunks in there. So we're gonna go just for another minute or so and then call it good. Alrighty, so I'm gonna pour it back in my pot now. Texture looks actually really good. And then here is when we're gonna check our spices. So we can turn it back on to reheat it, but on a lower setting. I don't really want this to boil now that I have my cream in there. And then we're gonna add our spices. So we're gonna put some cracked pepper in there, just 1/4 to 1/8 of a teaspoon of cayenne. Now the cayenne is really important to this recipe because it adds a little bit of zip with the sweet corn. But again, depending on if you have kids, how spicy you like it or whatnot, you can adjust that to your liking, but I would suggest to put some in there. So cayenne, 1/2 teaspoon of cracked pepper, and then salt to taste as well. So our soup is essentially done now. Once it's preheated, or reheated rather, after you've got your spices in there, then it's good to go. What I like to do is garnish it with a little bit of cilantro and just a few pieces of jalapeno as well. That adds a little bit of texture and color back in there as well. There's my corn bisque. A little bit of cilantro for the top. Some jalapenos in there. And I'll just top it with a little bit of cracked pepper. And there we go. It's a really nice appetizer for your meal or a standalone lunch as well. If you found this video helpful, press the like button and subscribe to more videos.